Lesson number 14, the First Amendment. So from here on out in the pod, each lesson and each assignment will be about usually a specific amendment. Sometimes it'll be one or two amendments, but for the most part it'll focus on just one of the amendments. So obviously we're going to start off with the First Amendment. So the lesson we'll talk about what the First Amendment is and what it's got to do with us. So the objectives, the things you'll be able to do by the end of the lesson: you'll be able to list and describe the rights afforded to Americans under the First Amendment. And you'll evaluate whether or not specific examples uphold or violate First Amendment rights. So you'll be able to list and talk about the rights that we have in the First Amendment. You'll be able to look at a situation and decide whether or not someone's First Amendment rights have been violated. The questions you'll be able to answer at the end of the lesson: what rights are guaranteed under the First Amendment, and how do these freedoms affect us today? So you'll be able to look at situations and try and figure out if and when you're using these freedoms that are in the First Amendment, and if and when they're being violated by the government or police or teachers even. But we'll get into that as we go through the different freedoms that are in the amendment. So before we start, what are the freedoms that are in the First Amendment? There's 5 of them. You have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, right to assemble peacefully, right to petition the government. So we'll go through each one and talk about them briefly, and then in the assignment you're going to look at an actual situation where whether or not one of the freedoms was violated is kind of up for debate, and you'll be able to give your opinion on that. The lesson will just focus on what these things mean. The first one's probably the most famous one. It's freedom of speech. So freedom of speech guarantees Americans the right to say what is on their minds in public or in private without fear of punishment. It's also called freedom of expression, meaning that you can say things or express your ideas and opinions as you see fit. You're allowed to do that, and you can't get in trouble for it. Now, you might be saying to yourself, "Oh, I don't have freedom of speech because I can't say whatever I want whenever I want, or I can't wear whatever I want whenever I want." There's things that are kind of limitations to freedom of speech. You're not allowed to use speech that would harm someone else. An example of that's slander. If you're intentionally and falsely smearing someone's reputation in speech, for example, if you're on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, any social media sites, and you are saying something that is false about someone else, that is not freedom of speech. You can say that, but technically you could get in trouble for that if it is false, and you are spreading things that are false about someone else. That's called slander, and it goes against the whole idea of freedom of speech. You're not supposed to be saying things that can harm the reputation of other people. You don't bring up things that are false and spread them about others. You could be held for slander in that case. It does not include the right to endanger the government either. You can't do and say things that could be seen as treason, meaning that you want to overthrow or topple or hurt someone that is involved in government. Like, you can't talk about how you want to kill the president, for example. If you said that, are you using freedom of speech? Are you just saying something? Yeah, but it's something that endangers someone else, so it could be seen as going against freedom of speech. Do we have freedom of speech? We do. We're able to say what we want, but within reason. We're not supposed to be hurting others. Speech isn't even just saying things. Speech can be nonverbal as well. For example, there was a court case, Stromberg versus California, where somebody was holding up a flag to represent their ideas and their opinions about something. The flag itself, just holding it up, that's seen as freedom of speech. If you wear a shirt that says, I don't know, a shirt that says that you support like a certain political candidate, that's freedom of speech because you're showing your support on a shirt. Are you actually saying that, or words coming out of your mouth? No, but you're displaying it, so that can be freedom of speech as well. That's the other word, like we said earlier, for freedom of speech, freedom of expression. You're expressing your views not through actual words, but in other ways. Freedom of religion means that you can practice whatever religion you want, or you can choose not to practice any religion at all. And Congress and the government are not supposed to have any rules or laws that make it so there's an official religion in the United States, or that there's laws that favor one religion over another. That means they can't make laws that are more favorable to Christians than Muslims, or for Muslims to Christians. It has to be everyone's treated the same. We're going to go over this in live class. Let's go to the next one, freedom of the press. What does press and media include? So, you might not have heard the word press before in this way anyway. When you think of press, you might think of like pressing a button. This is a different press. Press is anything that gets the news out. Like books, newspapers, magazines, the radio, television, and primarily in our society today, internet is how a lot of people get their news. So the freedom of press is the ability to write down ideas, to write down factual things that have happened, and distribute them to people through the things that you see up on the screen right there. The next one's freedom of assembly. That means that you're allowed to get in groups with people and assemble peacefully. So you can be in groups with people, and you can't be told to move along. There are limitations to this. There's some cities that have loitering laws, for example, where if you're standing in one spot for too long, you can be asked to move. This is more about being able to meet with other people and discuss ideas, not just so much hanging out, as I think some people think this is. This means that you can get together with people and talk. You can form organizations, you can discuss ideas. That's freedom of assembly. You have the freedom to assemble together or get together. The rights to petition means that you can speak out against the government. You guys have probably heard of a petition before, where it's like a piece of paper, and it'll say something that people want done, and then everyone like signs their names underneath of it. And that's a petition. That's what petition means. That if there's something wrong and you want it to change, you have the right to talk about why you think that it's wrong and how you want it to change. You won't get in trouble for criticizing or bringing up something bad that you think the government's doing. So a lot of this stuff has to do with our interaction with the government. There's things that we are allowed to do and say when it comes to the government. We can criticize them if we want to. We can meet with other people and criticize the government if we want to. We can speak out or wear t-shirts that criticize the government. The government cannot take away our freedom of religion. We can write about the government. We have the right to news. The First Amendment is all about our interactions with the government, the things that the government cannot take away from us, and the powers that we actually have over the government themselves. There's a quote from Harry Truman up on the board. He was a president. I'll read it to you. It says, "In a free country, we punish men for crimes they commit, but never for the opinions they have." It means that in this country, if you are punished, you are punished because you did something wrong, because you broke a law. But in this country, if you have an opinion and you voice it, you should not be punished. That's what he thought. Some of you might think that doesn't happen in this country. People are punished for their opinions all the time. Bring those up in live class, and we can talk about them, because there definitely have been instances where people were in trouble for just opinions and thoughts. That happens. But bring them up in live class if it's something you want to share. Now, you might think to yourself, doesn't have all the rights that we have in that First Amendment. There's a lot of other stuff that we're allowed to do. You're allowed to talk on the phone. You're allowed to go to the store if you want to. You're allowed to exit out of this video right now if you wanted to. No one's forcing you to watch it. So where are those rights? The Ninth Amendment says that just because it's not in the Constitution, it doesn't mean that you don't have that right. So just because it's not written down doesn't mean that you don't have that right. You have all the reasonable rights that I just talked about. That includes right to education, safety, privacy, the right to walk down the street, the right to walk your dog, like I said, the right to go to the store. You have all those rights as well. So that's what the Ninth Amendment says. Just because they're not in the First Amendment or in any other amendments doesn't mean that you don't have those rights. That's the end of this video. So again, it was just an introduction to the First Amendment. Remember to go back through the video and pause if you need to. Remember, it's a good idea to look at the questions before watching the video if you want to go back and kind of watch the video in that way. If you have any questions about anything, just reach out. If not, good luck.